true for any other programming language. Let's say Java for that matter. So what happens in Java? Java would also have a similar main. It's just the case that with Java you would have to write main in just a different syntax. But Java would also have a main similar to this header file, right? So Java has something called imports, import. So include gets replaced with import, and the header file get replaced with packages, same things. So this concept that we have discussed which is true for any programming language. This those programming language has to have these basic constructs: a starting function called main, some header files, and then you write some basic Java has a printf called print line. Again, Java has also return statements. Similarly, Python also has return statements, and then Python has a main as well. Sorry, Python does not actually have a main. It's a scripting language. So yeah, so let's not go into Python. Let's stick to these kind of languages. So Python has a main, but in a different way. But these concepts are true and universal for all the other programming languages as well. So that's why once you get these concepts clear, then picking up a new language is quite easy. So one thing that I didn't discuss last time was what's a language standard. Someone was asking me about C89 and C99, right? So language standard is what do you mean what do you mean by the word standards? Standards is a set of specifications, right? So that's what for any matter. Let's say if I say give me any other example of standards other than in a programming context. You have some company ISO, some standards is there, right?
ISI.
ISI, yeah. So that's a standard there. So its standard is like it has to meet these certain criteria for something to be certified like that. Similarly, in a programming context or in a programming language context, your program has to meet the syntax of the programming language has to meet certain criteria to fall under that standard. So this is what a standard means. So C also has evolved through standards. I mean, there was a standard called C. You could read about it. It's all like text, and just you could read about what all criteria is fulfilled by a certain standard compared to some other standard. So I'll give you a very basic example. So let's say frozen.c, the same program which I took last time. So now I will show you like what it I'll just give you basic feel of a standard. So let's say I put a comment here. So this is the way you put comments. So there are two. I'll just speak about two standards now. Like with respect to this example. So there is a standard called C89 and there is a standard called C99. So C89 does not allow this kind of single line comments, this kind of things. Yes. So now let's see if I try to compile my program with that standard. Last time we did not pass any standard, right, when during compilation, but actually you could just use this switch here which says which standard are you expecting the program to be in. During compilation you could set that standard. You see this, right? This kind of this style of comments is not allowed in this standard. But now if I just switch the standard from 89 to 99, it works. So this is the basic some basic things. So in another in maybe in C18, and there is something called you have to, whenever you are declaring something, right? So then you have to initialize it right there. If you don't initialize it, then it will give you an issue, it will give you an error. I'll come to initialization and then declarations. But then if you are using a variable, right, so right up till wherever you have declared the variable, you have to initialize it as well with some value. If you don't initialize it in that standard, you will get an error. But in some other standard you might not get an error, but because that standard relaxes that constraint. So this is what standards mean. Any questions here?
So by default, it's
I think
running
by
C99.
yeah, by default it's the most recent standard. So yeah, so 89 is like the previous standard, right? So by default is the mostly like, yeah, the recent standard that works with the compiler. So yeah, we don't have to worry. I mean, during I mean, you just remember it for a fact. I mean, if someone asks you, and you shouldn't look like a fool, right? You know how to do this and that, and you don't know what's the standard. So yeah, I am just saving you from the embarrassment. Yeah, just remember this. So yeah, so that's standard. Yeah, yeah, okay. So yeah, so one more thing. So can someone tell me what's the difference between a program and a process? Have you? Yeah. So I showed you last time, right? I showed you this particular thing here, this particular window. I can see all these IDs, right? 2881231444. This all these IDs. These IDs are of the processes running on your system. Now, what is the difference between such a running thing that's a process and a program that you have written? What's the difference?
So,
Yes.
sir, I think like the uh, whole thing, the frozen.c is an example of a program, and the particular line print hello world or print something, that is an example of a process.
Uh, Not exactly. Yeah, but your first part is correct. So this thing,
The
right?
process is a running program.
Yeah, correct. That's the one word answer for it.
So process is active, whereas program is can be passive as well.
Yeah. Process is the alive beast, and program is the dormant thing that is sitting on your hard disk. Sorry, program. Yeah. So it's program is just like a static file, like which is just sitting dormant in your hard disk. And then the moment you compile it, right, and you create an executable out of it, and the moment you run the exe, yeah, this just got over in just a second. But then within this second, this particular thing was behaving like a process, and then it ended. So process is when you take a program, compile it, and then when it starts running, that the running thing, that alive thing, which has taken space up on your RAM, and when it is in full execution mode, that thing is called process. So all these things right here, all these things, these are all processes. But most of the processes are not something that I have created. These are processes which came from the operating system side, because I need these processes, right? So some processes are monitoring my key presses, some processes are monitoring my voice and sending it over across this software to you guys, all these things. So all these things are done by these alive beings that are there in your program's memory. All these things are taking up some places in your program memory, and they are thriving there. So these are called processes. And each process, just remember, is every process has a process ID. Why do you need a process ID? Because you have to identify that process, right, with some distinct name. Because you cannot just name a process with some name, because you'll first run out of names. So that's why your operating system chooses to give a unique number, unique ID to your process. So this is what is called the process ID on the very leftmost column, the first column. All these numbers are process IDs. So yeah, so just a quick thing. So if you want to kill a process, what do you mean by kill a process? So this thing is living, right? So there's a living on your program's memory, eating up your memory, and then doing something. It's alive and nice and kicking. But all of a sudden you decide, okay, I don't want this process anymore. It's bugging me a lot. It's bugging my system a lot. Then you would want to kill the process. What is the way to kill the process? Tell me, how do you kill a process? I mean, what happens if you kill a process?
The program stop executing.
That's one thing, but how do you make it stop execution? What happens? Like, how do you take it? I mean, we have discussed this from the hardware perspective, remember? Just think about how do you make something which is nice and living, and then how do you all of a sudden make it dead in your program, in your computer?
Make it return with some code.
Now, that's one thing, but then you can just take out its memory, right? Whatever memory it was occupying in your program space.
Yeah, we can delete it from the RAM.
Yeah, so that's it. Now once its instructions are there removed, there's no way that you can run your program, isn't it? You can run your program, sorry, there's no way your process will be executing after that. So this is what this particular command does. If you have a kill, right, kill, there's a process called, there's a command in Linux called kill. So you just say kill, and you have to give it a program ID. This is the process ID. Once you say this, and then it will kill the process. I have no active process that which I can kill. That's why I've just given some random number here. But then if you just say kill and give you the process ID, how will you get the process ID? You just get h top. You just say h top and pick a number from here, process id, pick a number from here, and then just say kill and just give that number. Your process will be your process resources that it was consuming, like memory, will be revoked from the process, and then the process will get killed eventually. Any questions up till this point?
Sir, during our first lab, the sir told that we type a command Control C to
Yes.
stop the undergoing process. And what's the difference between the kill and the Control C?
So Control C is something. See, Control C is, I mean, again, we will be going off topic, but still Control C means when you have a process that got hanged. What do you mean by hanged? Let me show you. So let's say I have a frozen.c program, and then I just write an infinite, I mean, don't worry about the syntax. I mean, don't worry about the while loop. Just, yeah, just put it like this. So this program will never finish complete. It will run always, because there's an infinite loop there. You see this, right? It's continuously running. So then this is the process which is running on the terminal, right? So then I want to somehow reclaim my terminal. That is, I should get this prompt back, right, on the terminal. I should be able to get this thing back. So Control C is a way of killing the most recent process which you have just launched. Actually, it's just there on the front. You just see this is there on the front, and if I just do Control C, the program gets terminated. So there is no way using Control C you could actually kill a specific process. There's no way. You can only kill the process which you just executed and which has been like hanged on a terminal. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, good. So let's
Sir?
yeah.
Sir, Control C and Command C works in the same way.
What is Command C?
Sir, in Mac we have Command, right?
I don't think so. Let me see.
In Mac, I think.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work out Command C. I'm also a Mac, so you have to say Control C only.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I just tried it out. It doesn't work. I get confused on the command key on the Mac. I don't know why it is used. Yeah, but I'm confused on that actually. Sometimes it work. Sometimes Command C, as in control copy pasting, works for Command C, and sometimes Control C works in some places for copying. So I don't know.
Sir,
Yeah.
why did your ./out provide no output?
Yeah, that's what I told you. Let's not go into the syntax of that, because I have to explain you this infinite while loop that is there, na?
Okay.
It's an infinite loop which is sitting there.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so today we will be, yeah, no, not, I mean, yeah. So these things are clear, right? These 3 points about program a process, and then the standards, and that, yeah, that the first point which I made about the programming languages. Yeah. Yes.
So after kill command, we write the process ID.
Yes.
So we can't write any random process ID, and it's just represented by numbers. So how would we know that which number represents which process?
Yeah, so that's why you have to have this thing, right? The htop. So Linux has this utility called, I mean, in Windows, if you go to Task Manager also, you will see some number for every process. See, these numbers are there, na? PIDs.
So how do we know this? Which number represents which process? Like if we type any random number, we can terminate any process.
Your process will be written here, na? If you see this, right? See, yeah, let me show you this. If it's, yeah. So let me just run frozen.c now, right? I have just run and it's running because it's an infinite while loop, isn't it? So now if I use one more terminal, see, if I use one more terminal, I would see a program. See, I would see a program, I think under my name somewhere. See, one of these processes is that frozen.c program that was running, that's still running.
First one.
You see this as I have two processes here.
Yes, sir.
So one of these processes, yeah, one process is the htop that I just ran, and I think the other process, this 2169, is that process, which is running infinitely, that infinite loop. So whenever I launch a process, that process gets an entry in this table, and on the rightmost, see a dot out. You see this, right? Command is a dot out. You see this, right? On the rightmost column, you see what was the what is the command you use to launch that process. I have used a dot out, right, to launch that executable. So that's why I can see an a dot out. And what is its user ID? 23, let's kill it, 23230, 23230, right? So kill -9 23230, and we have killed, see, we have killed a soul, we have killed a process, sorry, I was about to say soul. See?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So let's start with something new today. I mean, new as in it will carry forward to the other lectures as well. So let's start with program variables today. Yeah, so this line, this program here, frozen.c, it's a meaningless program, right? What did we do here? We just took a single line and we just printed it out. You can't do much with printfs. I mean, you can't do anything in printf until and unless you are a programmer who just wants to type fancy greeting statements. That's it. You can just do that much with a printf. Yeah. So you have to have more tools under your belt, right? You have to have more syntax under your belt to do some more logic or more significant programming. So one such tool is variables. One such syntax is variables. So what are variables? So I have a slide here, I think. Yeah. So, okay, do you guys have ideas on variables? How many of you guys know already what are variables? Because this is a very basic thing. Yes. So
We store our data.
yes, with stored data. So we will gain more perspective on this particular concept of variables and storing data. Yeah, in a very short and concise way. This is what a variables means. It is used for storing program data. But then, what does it actually mean? See, your program is actually, yeah. So one thing I forgot to mention to you. So you can always sorry, I forgot to mention to you. So there's one thing called a straight line sequence of code. This is again a you could say a jargon like which you will hear later on. Straight line sequence of code means this is a straight line sequence, as in if you have a printf, if you have one more printf, if you have one more printf, so all these printfs will be executed one after another. So there is no way the second printf could execute before the first printf. That's called a straight line sequence. That is, this is the sequence in which things will execute. Why am I making this so explicit? Isn't it obvious, right? Isn't it obvious that always the things will run in straight line? It's not obvious when you go for a parallel or a threading environment where you have instructions which can run parallelly. So if
Can you repeat what is that?
see, straight line sequence means
No,
that
some parallel thing.
so this is straight line, right? Line 1, line 2, line 3. So parallel, in a parallel perspective, what we will be actually able to do in your later, not in this course, maybe in later courses, is you could write parallel programs wherein you could launch both these statements in parallel, as in both these statements would be executed together in your CPU, inside your CPU.
Sir, can we launch only 2? Can we launch more?
No, it depends on the power of how powerful your CPU is. If your powerful supports a lot of parallelism, then you could have a lot of things. So what I'm trying to tell you is you could have multiple statements floating around and then executing in parallel over your CPU. And that's not a straight line sequence, right? Because you don't know in what order they are going to get finished. But for this entire for the course of this for the duration of this entire course, you will be just writing statements wherein you know if this statement is done, then there is only this statement that is going to be executed after this. There's no other statement that can execute. That's straight line sequence of code. So just remember this word. That's it. Straight line sequence and what it means. So now, yeah, so as I was explaining, yeah, so a single line does not make, you cannot do much with a printf. So that's why you will use variables. But before variables, I want to stress on something called expressions. So what's an expression? So So instead of doing this dumb printf, so let me just do this. Wait, let me just say printf. See, you get a value called 13, right? So what is that value when I executed the code? What is that value? This value came out from this expression, isn't it? 3 plus 3 is 9 and 9 plus 4 is 13. So what did my program do? My program took some numbers, like which I have provided as a, which is part of the program text itself. What is the program text? This is the program text. So those numbers are a part of the program text itself. And then my program did some calculations using those numbers, and then it gave me a value which I printed it back on the, which I printed out on the terminal. So this percentile d, right? So how does, yeah, so I will give you one syntax of printf which you have to remember always. Just so printf has this syntax. So printf, yeah, so the very basic thing about printf is like very basic function which you use printf for most of the cases is you just want to type a message, right? So whatever you type between these two symbols here, right? So whatever you type between these two symbols, that will behave as a message and it will be displayed on your terminal. So that's the first thing about printf. So whatever you put between these two quotes, that will come as an entire message and it will be displayed. But you don't always want to display messages. You may want to display uh, something, some output of some computation, right? Some output of some computation. So what is the computation happening here? The computation happening here is 3 into 3 plus 4, right? So what I can do is I can just say, so to show that output, I have to first say what the computation is. So the computation would be, this is the, sorry, so this is the computation here. So let me do one more computation. Let's say 4 plus 4 into 8 plus 9. So this is the computation, right? This is the computation. And then I want to also print the output of this computation. So to do that, I have to use, this is called, this percentile d is called a format specifier. So what is a format specifier? Format specifier comes into picture when you just don't want to print boring lines on the terminal. This is boring messages. You want to print something. You want to print an output of some computation that has happened. So why am I using percentile d? Percentile d stands for integer. That is, I want an integer to be printed on my terminal, because I know that the output of this entire computation would be an integer, right? 4 plus 4, 8 plus 9, whatever. I will get an integer value, not a point value. So that's why I have used this format specifier called percentile d. So this is the other way. This is one of the other important ways of using printf. You could take an expression, you could take a computation, and you could print its value using printf. But you have to use the correct format specifier, and the format specifier matches the type of output given by that expression. Is this clear, guys? This point?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So just
Sir,
remember,
sir,
yeah.
what will be the out?
So can't we
Sir,
just
what?
write the keyword int?
Yeah, because I'm not using variables now. That's why I wanted to show you just expressions. I will come to variables after this. See, I have not used variables anywhere here. Do you see me using variables? I have taken this expression and I have just printed its output right on the screen. I have not used variables anywhere. But yeah, we can variables, using variable is the efficient way of doing it. Yeah, I'll
So
do that
which
now.
are the various type specifiers?
So yeah, so for integers it is d, then there is f for floating points, and then I will come to that now when I discuss types of variables. So there are depending on the type of the output, you will have different format specifiers. So the
Sir,
most basic one is percentile d. Yeah.
Sir, what will happen if we just want to compute instead of using the double quotes? What will happen if we'll just write 3 star 3 plus 4 in printf?
You mean to say this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let us see what happens. It will not compile first of all. See, what happens is, because printf has a certain syntax to follow, no?
You did
Print-
not include quotations, sir.
Yeah, so that's what I told. Okay, did you? No, he didn't want me to put quotations. Did you want me to put quotations?
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, he
Sir,
just wanted.
quotation will just print the
Yeah,
message as it is, right?
yeah,
It will not
exactly.
compute it.
Exactly. If I put the quotations here, so this is what I will see, as you rightly mentioned. I will just see the thing as a text. There will be no computation happening here. So yeah, so it will just treat everything as a text now. So now, yeah, so now if I, yeah, so printf has a certain syntax to follow. Remember that. So printf has to have double quotes to start with. Just remember this. Printf has to have this part always. Without this part, it does not work. You may not have the second part. Yeah, so the printf has two parts actually. One part is for the double quotes and other part is for the other things that go into printf. Other things as in other parameters. So yeah, so this is the most essential part of printf. Without this, without the double quotes, printf would give you an error. I mean, it would just not work, right? So then, what are these other parts? These other parts are the you could say are the things that you send inside printf for printing, right? So when you don't have any other things, you just say a message and it prints out. But then if you have some other things to be printed out, let's say some other computations, you could just put them after the comma here, and then those things will be printed here. So it will be similar to, let's say, now if you want to print the output of two computations, let's say if you want to do percentile, now you have to do percentile d 2 times, right? And then you have to say this computation here is 1, and then you have to say 3 into 4 plus 12. So yeah, so now if you see this, see now you see two numbers, because you have used two percentile ds. This first will be corresponding to this, the second will be corresponding to this. So this is the basic syntax of printf. Just remember this. Okay, is this clear, guys?
Sir,
Sorry.
sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Sir, how many mathematical operators can we include in this percentage D wala thing?
See, this operator stuff is irrelevant to percentile d. There is no relation between this. You could use any you could write any expression using the operators which C supports, right? This has nothing to do with percentile d. All that percentile d is doing is whatever things I am passing here, right? It is first it gets calculated, and then whatever is the output, it gets linked to that percentile d and gets printed on the terminal. So I could have any operator here for that matter. There is no relationship between percentile d and this. Percentile d is just taking the output of this expression and printing it out.
Okay, sir.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So now let's move on. So now what I have done is I have taken an expression and I have just written it inside printf. But but for more, so yeah, so this is like behaving as your calculator, right? So what you did here, you just took your this is how you do things in your calculator, and you just type in numbers and then you get the output of that value, right, on your calculator. So these numbers here, it is representing that only. That is, I am using this program as a simple like dumb calculator. I'm just inputting the numbers in my program itself, and then these numbers are the calculations happening with these numbers is giving me the output inside printf. But your computer is much more than that, right? Yeah, and remember guys, one more thing. So again, going back, so remember when we had the very first discussion, do you guys remember program data and external internal data? Do you remember that? Quickly say yes, no.
No, sir.
Program data in the first class, I told you, right? Data
No, sir.
which is inside the program.
Yes, sir.
Or it's completely vanished
Data
from your
plus
RAM now?
instructions.
Huh?
So data plus instructions, that
Sir,
one.
we don't.
Don't you remember in the first class we had a discussion?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We had three kinds of data.
Yes, that part. Three kinds of data:
Yeah,
data
yeah.
that you
You
feed it from
remember?
outside,
Yes,
data
sir.
which is
It was
part
one
of
of
the
the first things
program.
you taught us.
Yes. So now these numbers are what kind of data? Tell me. This number which is part of your program.
Sorry, sir.
These numbers that are there in the program. This is what kind of data? What kind of program data?
Internal.
Yeah, correct.
Part of the
That's an
program
internal
itself.
data because these numbers are part of the program text itself. You don't have. You are not providing them from outside. Good. So just a recap on the previous lectures. Yeah. So now let's move ahead. So you will not be whatever expressions you have, you will not be writing these numbers implicitly in the program, right? I mean, this is a very, I mean, this is not a, I mean, your hands will be tied otherwise. I mean, because if you want to do this calculation, that calculation, you just go and directly feed the numbers. But what if the number changes? Then there is an issues, right? So example, you just want to do this, you want to do this operation, but then you want to do this expression using some other values, not these values. So what then, right? Do you get my point? Do you get my question? If you want to do this same computation but using different numbers, so what do you do? Let's say your program does not have variables. What do you do now? No. I am saying you want to do the same computation, add two numbers, do a multiplication, and add one more number. If you want to do the same calculation but using different numbers, and your programming language does not support variables, what do you do now? It's quite simple, right? You just take these numbers, you just copy paste them, and then just replace it with the new numbers. Do you guys agree with this? Do you guys agree?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can just type yes, no. I mean, you don't have to speak on the mic. For these kind of questions, you can just reply on the chat. Yeah, good. So that means if you want to, let's say, perform 100 different kinds of this kind of computations only, that is plus into and plus, then you have to write those numbers manually now inside your program, and just imagine how big your program will get at some point. You just not be able to keep track of your program. So then comes to the rescue variables. This is where variables comes into play. Now,
Sir, one more
so
doubt.
do you get the, yeah, tell me.
Sir, does this follow the Bodmas rule that we were taught when we were
No,
small?
it does not. It does not.
It
It does
follows
not.
as
I
it
mean,
is.
see, until unless you want to put it in some perspective here, we using some brackets, then it will give you the output as you wanted. But yeah, so for the BODMAS thing, right? I mean, bracket of multiplication, division, addition. Yeah. So that that rule is inbuilt in your compiler. So you don't have to worry about that rule being followed, putting explicit parenthesis. So that means BODMAS rule means 4 into 8 will happen first, then 4 plus 4, and then 9, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So is that happening in this case? That's happening, right? Did you verify that? That is
Yes,
the
sir.
BODMAS rule being followed or not?
It's being followed.
It's being followed. Why is it being followed? Because this is built into the logic of your compiler. This is how your program, this is how your compiler, see, compiler can't, your machine CPU will not execute this entire expression in one instruction. It will have 3-4 instructions mapped to this particular expression, because there is an addition, multiplication, and addition, right? There are at least three instructions that go in this expression. So based on the BODMAS rule, what the compiler will do is the compiler will arrange these instructions order, the order of the instructions in the program's memory. For example, the compiler would put 4 into 8 first in your instruction sequence. That is a sequence of numbers. After that, it will do the additions. Is that clear? Is this point clear? Yes, good.
Yes.
Just give me a moment. Yes. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So this BODMAS rule is being followed here anyway, so don't worry about that. The compiler will do that for you. Okay, good. So now, as I was coming to that, so this whole premise, right? So why do we need variables? We just need variables just for the single reason that if you want to do multiple expressions, you cannot just end up writing those expressions always, right? It's impossible. Sorry, if you want to use the same expression for different numbers, different values, you cannot just keep on copy pasting that expression and replacing those numbers with your new numbers. So for that reason, you need variables. So now let me do this in the variable way, because now let's say we know what variables are and we want to use them now. So now let's say we declare variables saying 2 A plus B into C. And then if you do this here, see, we got the output, but now instead of the actual numbers, what are we using here? We are using variables. So later, if I just want to do it with a new set of numbers, all that I have to do is I have to just change the variables now. I can say A equals to 2, then B equals to 10, and then I could say C equals to 90, and then I will get a new computation. I mean, I will get the same expression evaluated on different values. Yeah. What is this? What is Priyansh asking? What is this? But here. Yeah, anyways, you guys decide on the BODMAS thing. Let me just, So now see, how have I modified my program now? So what have I done is I have added the variable, I could say I have given it the power of the variables now, the program. So what I could do is whatever numbers, right, I was using before for computations. Now what I have done is I have allocated some data space for my program to hold those numbers. So again, if you have that RAM picture clear in your mind, the whole execution model, right, of the RAM and the CPU. Now, the moment I declare A, B, and C, that means I have reserved 3 slots from my memory, 3 slots. And I have called those, I have given the names to those slots. Slot 1 is called A, slot 2 is called B, and slot 3 is called C. Now I have got 3 slots in my RAM representing these slots in my program, represent these variables in my program. Now I can put anything in those slots as per my program. So what have I put at the very beginning? I have put 2, 3, and 4. Now those slots have been initialized. So this is what is called variable initialization. And this is called variable declaration. So this particular...
So these variables would be stored on RAM or secondary storage?
No, the variable, where does your program execute? Your program executes on RAM, right?
Yes, sir.
So then the variable would be on RAM. Now, why would it be on hard disk? It would be on the RAM.
I mean, when it's not executed, when it's compiled and stored, where are the variables stored?
It's a good question. So so now, so before that, I'll explain to you what is this thing, what's happening here. So before that, just remember this part here, right? This highlighted part, this part is called variable declaration. As in you are declaring the variable, as in you are declaring some storage space for your program to operate on. So variables are like these storage spaces which your program can act upon. Because without these storage spaces, your program can't do anything, right? Because the program would want to execute some instructions or execute some program statements and then store the result of those program statements somewhere else. And then later on, take those results that it has stored and pass it to some other statements in the program. So all these things has to happen, or all these things can happen only if you give the program some storage space to work on, to do its computation. So that storage space is represented by variables. So this part here is called the declaration, wherein you are saying I have declared this space and I have named it A. In my entire program now, I could use this, and I could use this storage space just by referring to it as A. That's all. The second part here, yeah, so if I just don't do this, if I just don't do this, so this is called variable initialization. That's it. Sorry, this is called variable declaration, this thing here. So variable declaration does not give the space, the allocated space for a value. It is just saying that I have reserved a space and I have named that space A. But you would want, but if you don't put anything there, if you just leave it at the declaration step itself, that particular space would be filled with garbage. That is, it will be uninitialized. There will be nothing inside there. It will be just zeros or some random number which will be there. So that's why in most of the cases you would want your storage space to start with some fresh value. And that value, this part here, the second part here, this part on the right side, this is called variable initialization. That is when you have allocated a space, you have also initialized the value there. As in, you could say, you are saying, okay, this storage space will have this value to start with. Later on, you could change the contents of that space. You see this, right? I have changed the contents of A, B, and C later on. But to start with, that place, I mean, that storage space had this value. That is 2, 3, or 4. So this is called initialization, variable initialization. This part is called variable declaration. And here in this case, in these steps here, I am just assigning new values to that space, to that allocated space. Now, I will come to that question again, like hard disk and the RAM, like where does the variable reside? So now this line here, if you just concentrate on line number 14 here, A equals to 6, right? So
Sir, should I remind you about the question in the next class?
Sorry?
Should I remind about the question in the next class or this class?
No, that's fine. I will explain, because in the final thing I have this hardware view, like what happens with the variables. I will explain that in the last part, like actually how does the variable take up space in your memory, right? I will come to that, but I am just explaining things from the syntax and from the program's view now. I mean, I'll go to the hardware later at the end. Yeah. So now when you are saying A equals to 6, right? A equals to 6 here. So what happens is you are changing the contents. You are changing the contents of that storage space, which was allocated for A. Now instead of 2, that space would have 6 stored there. So this is called, you could say, this is like you are writing some new stuff to that location, right? And in that whole, from the hardware perspective, this would look like your CPU has asked your bus, right? Your bus that was sitting like between the RAM and the CPU. Your CPU has asked your bus, okay, take this value 6 and then go to the location, which is, I mean, go to the location for A. That is, go to the location where this particular variable is located and just place there. Go and place this value 6 there. I know it had a value 2 there, but just go and replace that 2 and just keep 6 there. So this is what happens. Like it will, the CPU will ask the bus to go and place this number on that particular location. So after this point, whenever you will be accessing A, you will be seeing 6. That is, its previous value would be erased. So this is called writing to a variable. Now, this part here, what am I doing here? When I say A, what am I doing? I am just going to that location and reading whatever is located there. So this is called, I am reading the variable. I am reading the value of the variable as whatever is stored in that location. And then I am just using it. So this is called reading a variable. This is writing and this is reading. Writing to a variable changes the contents of the variable, and then reading a variable, you just read whatever you have written, the whatever you have written last onto that location. And that's why when you write to a variable, that variable is always on the left hand side, followed by a equal to, and then the value on the right. And whenever you read from a variable, let's say, whenever you read, you just say the name of the variable and read its value. But then let's say you want to do this, you have one more variable called z now. Now if you just want to compute, so now if you just want to do this, right? So what have we done? We have simply taken the output of this expression, output of the expression represented by these variables, and stored it in z, stored it in a new variable. So if you just look at the equal to sign here, when your variable is on the left hand side, that means you're writing some things onto that variable, onto the location represented by that variable. And whenever you are using variable on the right of an equal to, that means you are just reading the value of the variable. So this is called LHS and this is called RHS. And this operator here, right? So this equal to is an operator. This operator is called the assignment operator. So I've actually also shown you the assignment operator along with the other operators, that is the numerical operators of plus, minus, into, and divide. And now you can go about and then and then you can do things with these variables. So later on you could again change the contents of A, B, and C, and then you can get the new, you could get the new value of this expression. Okay. So is this initial discussion on variables clear?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear for everyone? For people who are, I know people who know programming, it's like a very dumb discussion. But then I'm asking people who are very new to programming. Is it clear for those people?
Yes, sir.
Sir, I have a doubt.
I just want one response from the person who was completely new to programming and who understood this.
I am completely new and I understood it.
Okay, good, nice. Yeah, some
So I
questions.
have a doubt.
Yeah.
Like we have assigned z equal to a plus b multiplied by c.
Yeah.
And if we give a new value to ABC after this,
good.
What will be the value of z? Like it will be the previous.
That's a very, very good question. Good. Is someone viewing the news while I'm speaking? Okay, no, it's not news, it's some background noise. Yeah. So let me just now change these values here. Okay, so now can you put yourself on mute? Yes. Wait. Someone's mic is on, Abhijit. Anant, yeah, Anant. It was Anant. Okay, so let me do one thing now. So as he was asking me the question, so what he's asking is, what if I change the contents of A, B, and C after this statement here? What happens to Z? So let me now, first let me not put it there, and let me now first see what is the value of Z. So just like keep a note of this. So the value of Z is, okay, I have not printed the value of Z. Okay, I did print, right? So what happened? Yeah, I got a value of 906, right? 906. Now Let me go back, and then after this statement, let me say I will change the value of a to 12. So let me say if I get something different now. See, I will not get anything different now. I get the same value. Why? Because when this statement happened here, z equals to abc, what happened in this statement? On the right hand side of the assignment operator, I just read the value of abc, right? I just read it, and it's similar to something like this. This entire thing just it's something like 6 plus 10 into 90. This entire statement on the right hand side, this thing, sorry, this expression, it is replaced by these numbers here, and then that value gets assigned to z, and then you are done. That value gets stored in the location represented by z. Now whatever I do with the contents of a, b, and c does not matter, right? So I have, because I have read those values, variables, and I have calculated the expression using their values and have stored the result onto a different location called z. So even if I choose to write something else on those variables a, b, and c, it does not interfere with the output that I have stored in z. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So that's why even if I change ABC, it does not matter at all. Yeah, obviously, but if I go ahead and change Z, if I just do this, it will change, right? Because, sorry. If I go ahead and change Z now after this, so what would happen is, see, I will just see 12. So whatever value was there in Z, which was the output of this expression, that got completely overwritten by this new value called 12. Because I am writing to the same location, right, where you have stored the output before. So now, yeah, so variables are clear, right? At least the starting this point about variable declaration, initialization, and how do you and where do you use and how do you use variables.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. If we initialize a variable at the time of declaration,
yes,
would it get the work done somewhat faster than initializing it?
Yeah, you could say that because it's something like if you don't do this, right? If you don't do this, and then if you initialize the value of a later on, let's say a equals to 12. This is one instruction and this is one more instruction. So these are two instructions to do the same stuff. But if you do this here itself, then it means within one step itself, you are doing both the things. It's a very, very small improvement, but you could say it's an improvement, but it's a very, very like negligible thing because it's this particular instruction does not take much time. It's just like writing to a location in memory.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's go back to our page here. So I have told variables. I have told declarations. What is variable declaration? Variable declaration is when you just say this is the variable, when you're just creating a space of the variable in the ren. Assignment, that is what is assignment is. Assignment is using this assignment operator, the variable on the left hand side and the value on the right hand side. Now just remember this, the value can come out of an expression just like this, right? The value, right? The value for the variable, it can come out of an expression just like this, or it can be an actual number. It may not be, it doesn't always have to be a number or an expression. It can be both. Here in this case, you see, right? I am just putting this direct number into this variable. But in this case, I am calculating this expression and putting the result into this variable. Okay, so now let us go finally in this last 20 minutes. Now let us go into the type of the variables. So now, what variables are you discussing here? We have just discussed the int type of variables, right? So what is this int type of variable? So let me do this. If you guys have any questions, you can just ask me till I type my program.
Sir, can we make the user to enter the variable data in the variable?
I will come to that in the next class. That is scanf and scanf. How do you read? Yeah, you could. There is a way you need. Okay, if you are impatient, then I would explain to you in the end of the class. Just remind me that, because you might just want to write some programs right till the next class. So I will explain how to do that as well. But I will go into scanf details in the next class. Okay, so now, so yeah, so what have I used here? So I just want to know. So there is an there is a function called size of function. Again, I think size of function is defined in this header called stdi.h. So I'm just using the function as it is here. It's a C function which is part of a header file. So let me just see if it compiles or not first. Yeah, it compiles. Okay. So now this is size of, right? This is the size of operator, or sorry, the size of function which is there in this header. So now what do I want to know? I want to know the size of an integer. So let me not just a, let me just use a. Yeah. So I just want to see what is the size of, that is how many locations was a mapped to, because I gave you a very simple description about a being mapped to a single location in RAM, right? A single byte in RAM. But that's not generally the case. A single variable in your program would take up more than 1 bytes in most of the cases. So I just, now using the size of operator, I just want to know how many bytes of RAM or how many bytes of your program data has this particular variable captured, or whenever you say a, how many bytes are you able to access in one go. So this is what the size of operator will show me. If I just run this, see 4, this will give me 4. That means what I got to know from this is that the location called a, that has 4 continuous bytes assigned to it. Or you could say, or in a simpler analogy, you could say you have created an area, right, in your program memory, and that area, the name of that area is the variable a. That the area's name is a, and how big is that area? That area is 4 bytes big. So that is the size of an integer variable. That is, the integer variable is 4 bytes long. Now there are other types of variables. Let us say instead of int, let me use characters. Now let us see what is the size of a. See, now I see it as 1. That means that again, that same space represented by that, that same space which you are calling a, now that space is just 1 byte long, 1 byte wide. Because now I have changed the type of the variable to a character rather than an integer. Again, now let's go back, and now instead of a character, let me make it a float. Now let's see what is the size. Okay, the size is still 4. Good. Now I want to use something bigger actually. Yeah. See, now I have used one more type. Now that type is called long. And because of that, now I am seeing a size. Now I am seeing a size change. I mean, that same space which was called a, which has a size of 1. Now that same space has a size of 8 bytes. It's 8 bytes long now. Why is it 8 bytes long? Because I have changed the type of the variable to a long. So the bottom line is, this is what the type of a variable signifies. Type of a variable signifies how much, the first thing there, this is what the first thing it signifies, that how much space is allocated for that particular name or for that particular variable in your RAM. Whether is it 1 byte for character, 4 bytes for integer, or 8 bytes for long. Now, yeah, so now if you have a bigger space, let's say you just have 1 byte. Let's say instead of a character, instead of a long, this variable is a character. So how big is 1 byte? Tell me.
8 bits.
8 bits.
8
Yeah,
bits.
8 bits, right? So that means this variable called a, it is just occupying 1 byte or 8 bits in memory, right? So how big a value can a hold? What is the biggest value that a can hold within these 8 bits? If you have 8 bits, how many different numbers you can represent? 2 power 8, right?
Yes.
So that means this particular variable, it can hold only 2 power yeah. So what will be the largest value that a can hold? A can hold the largest value would be 2 power 8, isn't it? And what is 2 power 8? I think 2 power 8 is somewhere around 255 or 256, right? So that means the size of a variable dictates how big a number it can store. Because the characters are just 1 byte long, that's why characters can only store values from 0 to 255 or 256. Yeah, so if you start from 0, then we have to go to 255, not 256.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes.
So how 2 to the power 8?
If you have two bits, how many different combinations can you have? Permutation combination, basic question.
4.
4. Why 4? Because 2 power 4, right?
Okay, sir, I understand.
Yeah, that is the analogy here. If you have 8 bits, you could represent 2 power 8 different values. That means that particular location called a, which is just 1 byte long, can hold 2 to the power 8 different values. That's it. And what will be those values? They will be starting from 0 and they will go all the way up to 255.
Okay, sir.
If you want to store something beyond that, let me store that. Let me store something beyond that. So what will be something beyond that 1000, right?
Yes, sir.
So let me see if I get the correct. First, to do a sanity check. So let me just store 250. So let me say what value I get here as a. So now just remember, what am I doing here in this program? I am just going to a location called a in the memory, which is just 1 byte long, and I'm storing a value called 250 there. Now if I run it, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, you guys have to deal with all these things. It's called unsigned now. Yeah, don't worry about this now. I will explain it in much depth what this signed unsigned means. Yes, actually this is what we wanted, but don't worry, consider the unsigned part, guys. Yeah, so now you see the 250 value, right?
So shouldn't we store in characters using quotes? Like,
I'll come to that also. I'll come to that way. See, at least understand this fact that what have I done in this program? Let me remove these 2 lines. I have taken up a memory space called a, which is 1 byte long, and I have stored a value called 250 there, right? And then in this statement, I am just reading that value back, and I'm checking whether that particular value in that particular location got written correctly or not. And as per my output, I got it correct, right? I got 250, right? You guys are with me, right?
Sir, I still don't understand the reason behind 2 to the power 8.
Did you study like bits, right? 2 bits and bytes in school, right? How many different
Sir,
things
I
you can
studied it
replace?
here only.
Binary.
Okay, see, if I ask you a permutation combination question, if you have 2 things, right? If you have two different values, how many combinations you can get using those two things? If you have an apple and an orange, how many combinations you can get out of that apple and orange? How many permutations, or I don't know what permutation or combination, something, yeah. It
Sir,
will be
2 combination.
Why 2 combinations? No, sorry. I mean, the analogy was wrong here. So let's say you have two bulbs, right? 2 bulbs.
Okay, sir.
Right, and then using those 2 bulbs, in how many configurations can those 2 bulbs be in? The first configuration will be both the bulbs are on, right? The second configuration,
4 ways, sir. 4 ways.
4 ways. Similarly, instead of 2, now think 8 bulbs. How many configurations you can have?
Okay, 2 to the power 8.
That particular number is called 2 power 8. That how many different combinations you can have out of these. Think of these bulbs now as bits, right? So that's why you could have 2 power 8 different values now within a byte. You cannot have more than 2 power 8 value within a byte. So this is what I am trying to experiment here. Now I have allocated a byte, that is I have allocated a variable which is just 1 byte long, and I am trying to store a value called 250 now in that location. So how will that value 250 be located is, there will be 8 bytes, right? So then if you just convert 250 to binary, that means you will get a sequence of ones and zeros. So those ones and zeros would be stored in that location, right? Now, if instead of 250, if I try to store 10250, 1250, can I store it in 8 bits? Tell me, can I store this number in 8 bits?
No, sir.
No, why? Because it is bigger than 2 power 8, right? Isn't it? It is much bigger than 2 power 8. So you just exceed the, I mean, you don't have that many bulbs to represent that number. So
Sir,
yeah.
Could you please explain again what is unsigned character?
You don't worry about the unsigned character. Just think of this entire thing as 1 byte. I don't want to deal with signed and unsigned today. So just think about this entire thing, right? Unsigned character as a character only, which is just 1 byte long. And you can store values from 0 to 255 in that location. Okay, otherwise, I mean, I cannot explain the signed and unsigned today.
Okay, sir.
Is that okay? So just think of this entire line here, unsigned character, as a character only, which can just store a maximum of 2 power 8 value, 2 power 8 values. So now if I run the code here, see, what did I get? I got some other number called 2 power 26. I never got this, right? I never got 1250. First, I never got it. And second, I got a warning saying large integer. It is a large value which cannot be stored here. Guys, someone is again on unmute. Can you please stop? Was Anant who was speaking just now? So Anand, I would ask you to go on mute always, man. I mean, how can you go on unmute automatically? Don't do that because it disturbs the rest of the class.
Yes. Sir, since you said character can be used to store alphanumerics, how are alphabets stored in binary arrangement?
I will come to that now. But is this example clear for all of you guys? That I stored a value 1250, but I got 226.
Yes, sir.
Which is not the correct number actually. Why? Because I just went out of my space, which was given to me by my variable.
Sir, is 226 some computed value or is it just garbage?
It's not garbage. If you just take 1250, right? So I think 1250 would need around 10 bits of 10 bits. In 10 bits, I think it will need around 11 bits. So if you take 11 bits, right, then you could represent 1250. Now from the 11 bits, you just chop off the first 3 bits and you just take the last 8 bits. So whatever that last 8 bit is, right? So that is this 26. Did you get it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is where the question that I just got asked, right? So that's a very important question. So why am I seeing this number 226? It is because you cannot represent, you don't have 11 bits to start with. You just have 8 bits. So because 1250 requires 11 bits, so what would happen is starting from the left, right? So you can only hold 8 bits, and whatever the 3 bits were there, right? Yeah, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, the 3 bits you cannot store in that location. So those 3 bits will just fall off, and it will just leave you with those 8 bits. And those 8 bits is actually this number, 226. Okay. So
Sir,
now
can we not store negative value in this unsigned character?
Yes, so this is what signed, and I don't want to go there into this discussion. So this is what signed is. If you want to
Sir, 226 is not garbage. It's the remainder of 1250 divided with 256.
That's what I told you now. If you do remainder, right? So what happens? If you have 1250 requires 11 bits of storage, right? If you want to do one thing, just in Google, just type the binary of 1250, and from the left side, just take the 8 bits. So those 8 bits are 226.
Yes, sir.
Now you get it now, because what happens is you cannot store 11 bits, so only 8 bits you can store, and the left and the other 3 bits will just fall off from your area, because your area is not big enough to hold those. It's like those 3 bits will overflow, and then your bucket can only hold 8 bits, and those 8 bits are the number 226. Those 8 bits are actually part of this number called 1250, but then you don't have the starting 3 bits on the right. That's why you cannot make this entire number. So you can only form part of this number, and that part is the 226 number, 226 value. So this thing that happened just now, right, that some bits fell off from your storage area. So that thing is called truncation. So this is what happened. Your number got truncated. And what is the truncated value? Truncated value is your number, remainder, or taking a mod with the biggest number that you can represent in that storage space. I have explained a very, very crucial concept actually called truncation. So did you understand this concept?
So why can't we use more than 8 bits?
Who is stopping you from doing that, man? Instead of character, just do this now. Instead of character, just put it as integer. That's it. Now see what happens. Now you have 4 bytes, right? Now your area, or your whole area called A, it's 4 bytes long. So then you could store this aram se, right? Because 4 bits is what, 32 bits long, and you could afford to store this big number 1250 because you have a lot of bits. Did I make myself clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Sir.
Is it clear for crystal clear for everyone?
Yeah.
This is a very
Yes, sir.
So I received a program from one of you. His name was Jay, I guess. Jay, are you here? I don't know if he's in.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, Jay. So Jay, remember you sent me a program of Fibonacci?
Yeah.
And then you told me what is wrong. I am not getting the output for bigger numbers.
Yeah.
Now you understand, right, what was happening with you?
Yeah.
Because that whole result, whatever you are computing, right, of that computation, you are trying to store it in an int variable. And that int variable is not big enough to store that value. That's why the extra things get overflowed, and then you are just left with this remainder. And that's why you are not getting the exact value.
Yeah, I got it, sir.
Good. So the guys, just remember this, that whenever you know that your computation is going to give you very, very big numbers, so just try to use that bigger storage. And what is that storage? That storage will come from the type of the variable. Because just now I have changed from, let's keep it at unsigned only. I have changed from unsigned character. I have changed from this type, which is 1 byte long. I have changed to unsigned character. I have changed to unsigned int now. And since int is like 4 times bigger than a character in terms of the storage, right? 4 bytes versus 1 bytes. So that's why I could easily store my number and read it correctly back in my program. Is this clear, guys? So then this is a very, very important point called the type of the variable and its area. So in the next class, what I will do is we will be on this discussion again. And then, sorry, where did the program go? Yeah, and then in the next, so this is one very important aspect of a type of a variable. Different types have different storage allocations. Some types are smaller and some types are bigger. So based on the output of your computation, you have to use the appropriate necessary types. In the next lecture, what I will show is this. Apart from that, some types have some logical behavior. For example, there is something called character and int, right? So what did we do? Character and int, we just increased the storage space. Character had 0 से लेके 255. Now integer had, let's say, 0 से लेके 2 power 32. But there are some other variables which not only are different in shape, but they are also sorry, in size, but they are also they look different as well. For example, if you have an int, right, and if you have a float, so these are two variables which they have the same space. I mean, they both are 4 bytes long. I mean, int and float. I showed you the example, right? When I use float with a size of, I got 4 bytes, and when I using int with a size of, I was also getting 4 bytes. Now, but these two variables, I mean, then someone would ask me, why do I need two different variables when both of them have the same shape, same size? We need it because both these variables, they have a different look and feel. And what is this look and feel? I will explain it to you in the next class. Like, what is the difference between a float and int?
Sir,
Where do you need a float and where do you need an int? Because the storage space is the same. Yeah, tell me.
sir, you didn't clear my doubt whether the variables are stored in secondary storage or primary storage.
I have that with me, don't worry. So before that, I got one more doubt asked actually. So someone was asking me, if I have a character and if I want to store alphanumeric numbers, right? Numbers. A character, sorry. Someone was asking me this, right? So this is what a character looks like. So if I want to store character, let's say A, into this variable, so I can store the character A. Remember these characters, right? All these characters up from A to Z. Your computer does not see them as characters. Your computer sees them as numbers. And what number corresponds to what character, that is decided by something called the ASCII. There's an ASCII table, right? American Standard Code of Information Interchange. There's an ASCII chart. So when I say this, so this is how you specify character, by the way. You just use these two, I don't know what this character is called. So just say this. So when you say this, then you are assigning the character A to this particular variable. So let me not use A, it will be confusing. Let me say Z. Now what this assignment is doing is, it's not storing the character per se, it is just storing the number that relates to this character as per the ASCII card or as per the ASCII chart. So now if I just print out A, right? So what I would see is, I would see the number 122. Now if any of you go to the internet and see what does ASCII 122 means, ASCII 122 means the number Z, small z.
Sir, if we remove %d from printf, will we get Z?
Yeah, for printing characters, not with their number representation, but let's say with their text representation, then you have to use %C. Now if you do this, right, now you will see Z instead of D. See what %C does is, what it does, whatever variable you have on the right hand side, right, so that variable will hold some value. So now this %C, this particular format specifier will look into the ASCII chart and say, okay, this number corresponds to this particular character, and then it will print out that character. But let's say I give it a number which does not fall in the ASCII chart, which does not fall in the ASCII table. It's out of range of the ASCII table. So let me just say I give it a value of, because ASCII values are all positive, so let me just say I give it a value of -2 using a signed declaration here. So now if I want to print the character, let's say corresponding to A, then what happens? See, I get a question mark. I mean, it's like maybe I'm not getting the correct character. So printf %C prints the character equivalent of that number. Now let's say I use 97 here instead of, let me see what does the number 97, which character equivalents to the number 97. Let me put it as character only. Now if I do this, see, I see a small a. That if you go on Google, if you see the ASCII value of a, small a, that will come out to 97. So all that this percentile C is doing is it is looking into the ASCII chart and seeing, okay, this number corresponds to this character. So just print this character out on a terminal right away. But if instead of percentile C, if you would have placed percentile D is nothing but it just prints the number as it is, right? It does not do anything. It does not do this translation, which was happening with percentile C. Are you clear? Okay, good. Okay, so final question, as was asked by someone. Yeah, it's already too late. So yeah, so now I will give you what happens when you declare high variable, and then yes, someone was asking me that where does this variable, does it reside on the hard disk or on the RAM? So your program is on the hard disk, right? You all agree on this, that your .c program is sitting on a hard disk. So now you're nice, you woke up and then you went to your computer and then you compiled your program, GCC, and then you gave it the file name. So then the GCC would go ahead and create an object file for you. So what is in that object file? Just, yeah, now I am trying to make sense out of those numbers which are located there. So one section of that object file would be that instruction section, which will contain the instructions of your program. Another section would be the data section, which will contain all the variables that you have used in your program. And for example, in this program, I have just used one variable, right? So in that data section of your object file, it will say, okay, this programmer needs one variable worth of 1 bytes. So just remember this. So when the loader loads your program, the loader will look into the data segment and it will load it into a certain area. Then, okay, the loader will say, okay, the programmer wants one byte of memory for this variable, better allocate 1 byte of memory. And then it will look into the instruction section and load all the instructions. And there your program execution starts. So this is how variables get loaded into memory. That is through the compilation process. In the object file, there are certain instructions to say, create this much space for this variable during loading. Did I answer your question?
So, sir,
yeah,
when it is not being executed, it is stored on hard drive. When it is starting to get executed,
it
gets stored into the RAM.
When it is not executed, that variable is part of your program text, right? It is just in it is.
No, sir, not even compiled. It's just in the.
Yeah, I know. When it is in your hard disk, right, as a file, it is just sitting as a file. Then your variable is just, your variable usage is just a line in your text file. That's it. It does not have any significance. It does not have any physical existence. Do you get it? It's your variable declaration when it is on the hard disk, right, on your file. Your variable declaration is just like any other random line you write in a text file. It's just that. That particular line comes into existence, or it comes alive during loading and compiling. That is, it comes into physical existence only during compilation and loading.
Got it, sir.
Got it, right? Good. Okay, we are done with today's lecture. Any questions on today's lecture? Was it clear, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, in the we have written that double main, so the double in the main has some significance, or it's only the size?
It has no significance. Just put it as int or void. No one uses double main in this way.
So,
yeah.
Sir, will you be explaining?
Yes. Tell me.
So that means, like, if we if the program is finished compiling, we won't be able to access some data that we have stored in the previous run. Like if we have to run it multiple times.
Yeah, you're 1000% right. Because just think how the entire process looks like. Your thing gets loaded, you get written, and then when your program is out from the memory, when your program is done executing, all the area has been deleted, right? That means all the variable spaces have gone away.
So can't we make it